Throughout history, mankind has reported on all sorts of strange occurrences: witches, werewolves, vampires, UFOs, ghosts, angels, and demons. Are these all just urban legends, stories, or myths? Or is there some form of truth that lurks in the shadows? Together, we endeavour to explore and investigate these strange occurrences which have taken place throughout mankind's history. Together, we are ETFW. Welcome to the library. In the bustling city that is New Orleans, located in the French Quarter, stands an old and beautiful building. Its architectural design and unique colour scheme whispers of happier and simpler times. However, in reality, it holds a far more horrifying truth. I speak of the building that is simply known as LaLaurie Mansion. To better understand LaLaurie Mansion, we must first talk about the woman it is named after. Marie Delphine Macarty was born on March 19th in 1787 in New Orleans. She was born during the Spanish colonial period and would go on to be married 3 times and widowed twice. Her first marriage was to a high-ranking Spanish royal officer who died in Havana due to unknown reasons. Her second marriage to a prominent banker, merchant, lawyer, and legislator who also died to unknown reasons. She would also have 1 daughter to her first husband and 3 daughters and a son to her second. Her third husband, a physician named Leonard Louis LaLaurie, apparently unconcerned with the previous 2 husbands' fate and being much younger, would marry Delphine. On June 25th, 1825, they would go on to have a son together. Madame LaLaurie, as she was known, would go on to purchase property at 1140 Royal Street, which she managed in her own name, with little involvement of her husband. In 1832, she had a 2-story mansion built there, completed with an attached slave quarters. She would live there with her third husband and 2 of her daughters, and maintained a central position in New Orleans society. The marriage, however, quickly started to take a turn for the worse. Neighbours overheard the couple arguing profusely, and in the early months of 1834, Louis LaLaurie packed his bags and left her. Losing her husband reportedly drove Delphine mad. Rumours had spread that she was harming her slaves, and in 1833, a 12-year-old slave girl named Leah fell to her death from the roof of the mansion while trying to avoid punishment from a whip that Delphine was using on her. It was later found that Leah had been brushing Delphine's hair when she hit a snag, causing Delphine to grab a whip and chase the young girl. On April 10th, 1834, a fire broke out in the LaLaurie residence on Royal Street, which seemingly started in the kitchen. When the police and fire marshal arrived at the residence, they found the cook, a 70-year-old woman who was chained to the stove by her ankle. She later said that she had set fire in a suicide attempt, as she feared being punished by Delphine. While she was being rescued, she informed police and the fire marshal that other slaves had been taken to the uppermost room. However, they had never come back. The rescuers rushed to the uppermost floor to ensure everyone had been evacuated. Upon being refused the keys to the slave quarters by Delphine, they proceeded to break the door down. What they found inside would haunt them for life. In their report, they had found 7 slaves, more or less horribly mutilated, suspended by the neck, with their limbs stretched and torn from one extremity to the other. One of the rescuers was Judge Jean-Francis Connage, who subsequently reported in his own accounts that he found a younger woman wearing an iron collar and an older woman who had received a very deep wound on her head and was too weak to walk. Subsequent reports from others also mention that the slaves were all emaciated, showing signs of being flayed by a whip, and were bound in restrictive postures, forced to wear spiked iron collars which kept their heads in static positions. The 7 slaves were all carried out by the firefighters to the Cabildo, where they received medical treatment, food, and drink. After the discovery of the abused slaves became widely known, a mob of local citizens formed and attacked the LaLaurie residence and destroyed anything they could get their hands on. A sheriff and his officers were called upon to disperse the crowd. However, the building had sustained such major damage that only the walls remained. Several weeks later, it was reported that 2 of the abused slaves had passed away. Investigators also dug up the backyard where they unearthed 2 bodies, one of which was the child Leah. Delphine's later life wasn't well documented. However, it has been confirmed that she fled to Paris in a self-imposed exile, where she would eventually die. The mansion would remain in a ruined state for 4 years until it was purchased and rebuilt by Pierre Tansuto and would be finished in 1838. Over the following decades, it would be used as a school, a conservatory for music, an apartment complex, a bar, a furniture store, and a luxury apartment building. The building has had a 3rd floor as well as a rear building added in the 19th century. There have been many stories and legends surrounding the mansion. One particular was from a person assisting in the firefighters on that fateful day. He spoke of one slave who had their bones broken numerous times and set in unnatural positions, so that when she moved, her limbs remained crooked and bent, and when she walked, apparently, she resembled that of a crab. Another slave was said to have had a hole drilled into his head with a wooden spoon sticking out. Another person was allegedly found with their skin peeled back, so that the tissue and muscle was exposed. For 200 years, there has been reports of paranormal activity coming from this house, and that many of them can be traced back to the slaves that Madame LaLaurie kept on the property. Reports of moaning coming from the room where the slaves were kept, and phantom footsteps echoing throughout the house. It has also been reported that a dark entity lays within the house. In 1894, when the building was serving as an apartment complex, a tenant was found brutally murdered in his room. The police originally suspected a robbery. However, nothing of value had been stolen. A darkening account was when police interviewed a friend of the deceased. He mentioned that his friend had claimed that he was having problems with spirits in the house. He had said that there was a demon in the house that wouldn't rest until he had met his end. Another chilling account is when the house was operating as a school. It had just undergone a conversion from a mixed school to an all-girls African-American primary school. After a short amount of time, reports of physical assaults occurred. The young girls were known to approach their teachers with tears streaking down their faces, and their sleeves rolled up, revealing their exposed arms, which were covered in scratches and bruises. When asked who had done this to them, they would always answer, it was a woman. Ever since, there has been rumors that the building is cursed, and I'm inclined to believe them. What do you believe of the LaLaurie Mansion? Would you be brave enough to visit? If you enjoyed this episode, please feel free to hit the like button, subscribe if you are new here, and comment your thoughts down below. Until next time, we are ETFW.